The worlds of cutting-edge science and ancient legends intersect as scientists express shock at the findings of the DNA analysis of remains found in the long-sought tomb of Gilgamesh. This isn't just a breakthrough, it's a revelation that's sending shockwaves through the realms of archaeology as it reveals startling truths about the so-called fallen angels, challenging everything we thought we knew about these almost mythical beings and the epic Gilgamesh himself.
After the Bible, no other ancient Near Eastern text as influential on the modern world as Gilgamesh has.
Where was this monumental tomb unearthed? And what do these genetic insights tell us about the intersection of human history and legend?
Definitely giants did exist in the past, and they were the result of a mixture between extraterrestrials and humans.
Stay with us as we unravel the secrets encoded in ancient DNA, shedding light on mysteries that have captivated humanity for millennia. Gilgamesh was a legendary king of Uruk, a city-state in southern Mesopotamia, now modern-day Iraq. He lived around 2700 BCE during the early dynastic period, when Uruk was one of the most powerful and influential cities in the region. Gilgamesh was not only a king, but also a hero, a warrior, a builder, and a seeker of wisdom. He was also renowned for his strength, courage, and intelligence, as well as for his arrogance, tyranny, and lust. He was considered to be 2/3 god and 1/3 human, making him a demigod or a Nephilim, a term that means fallen ones in Hebrew and refers to the offspring of divine beings and human women, as mentioned in the book of Genesis. The Epic of Gilgamesh is a collection of stories and poems that were written in cuneiform, the world's oldest form of writing, on clay tablets. The epic was composed over a long period of time, from the 3rd millennium BCE to the 1st millennium BCE, and reflects the literary traditions and beliefs of various Mesopotamian cultures, such as the Sumerians, the Babylonians, and the Assyrians. The epic was not a unified work, but rather a compilation of different versions and fragments that were later edited and combined by scribes and scholars. The most complete and famous version of the epic is the standard Babylonian version, which dates from the 13th to the 10th centuries BCE and consists of 12 tablets. This version was discovered in the library of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal in Nineveh in the 19th century CE by the British archaeologist George Smith. The Epic of Gilgamesh tells us about Gilgamesh's adventures and quests, as well as his friendship with Enkidu, a wild man created by the gods to be his equal and companion. Together, they defy the gods and challenge the forces of nature, slaying monsters, cutting down sacred trees, and killing the bull of heaven. They also explore the meaning of life, death, and immortality, as Gilgamesh mourns the loss of Enkidu and seeks to escape his own mortality by finding the secret of eternal life from Utnapishtim, the survivor of the Great Flood. The epic is full of action, drama, humor, and wisdom, and it explores themes such as friendship, love, heroism, fate, free will, civilization, nature, and the relationship between humans and gods. The epic has many points of contact and similarity with the Bible and other religious texts, such as the Quran, the Vedas, and the Mahabharata. For example, the story of the Great Flood, which is found in the 11th tablet of the epic, is very similar to the story of Noah's Ark in the book of Genesis. Both stories describe how the gods decided to wipe out humanity with a catastrophic flood, but spared one righteous man and his family, who built a boat and took animals with them. Both stories also describe how the boat landed on a mountain, how the man sent out birds to check for dry land, and how the man offered a sacrifice to the gods after the flood. Scholars have debated whether the Mesopotamian or the biblical story is older, and whether they share a common source or influence each other. Some have suggested that the biblical story is a reinterpretation of the Mesopotamian story, with a different theological message and moral lesson. Another example of the connection between the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Bible is the story of the Garden of Eden, which is found in the book of Genesis. The story describes how God created the first humans, Adam and Eve, and placed them in a paradise where they could eat from any tree except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. However, they were tempted by a serpent to eat from the forbidden tree, and as a result, They were expelled from the garden and became mortal and sinful. The story of the Garden of Eden has some parallels with the story of Enkidu's transition from nature to civilization in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Enkidu was created by the gods as a wild man who lived among the animals and ate grass. He was seduced by a woman, Shamhat, who taught him to eat bread and drink wine, and to wear clothes and follow the laws of the city. As a result, Enkidu became estranged from the animals and lost his innocence and freedom. He also became aware of his mortality and his need for a companion. Some have suggested that the biblical story is a critique of the Mesopotamian story, with a different view of human nature and divine will. Another example of the link between the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Bible is the story of Job, which is found in the book of Job. The story describes how Job, a righteous and prosperous man, was tested by God and Satan, who inflicted him with various calamities, such as the loss of his wealth, his children, his health, and his friends. Job questioned God's justice and wisdom, but remained faithful and patient. He was eventually rewarded by God, who restored his fortunes and gave him new children. The story of Job has some similarities with the story of Gilgamesh's quest for immortality in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, a powerful and wealthy king, was grief-stricken by the death of his friend Enkidu and became obsessed with finding a way to avoid his own death. He embarked on a perilous journey to the ends of the earth, where he met Utnapishtim, who told him the story of the Great Flood and how he obtained eternal life from the gods. Utnapishtim also gave Gilgamesh a chance to obtain immortality by telling him to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights, or by telling him to find a plant that could restore youth. However, Gilgamesh failed both tests and realized that he could not escape death. He returned to Uruk, where he found consolation in his achievements and his legacy. Some have suggested that the biblical story is a response to the Mesopotamian story, with a different perspective on suffering and hope. One of the ways some scholars have tried to explain the part human, part god nature of Gilgamesh is that humans at one point mated with aliens or other forms on non-human lives. However, is this a possibility? Well, consider the work of Svante Pääbo, an award-winning geneticist who first revealed that humans and Neanderthals were distinct species that diverged from one another about 500,000 years, and later showed evidence of interbreeding between the two different species later. According to Pääbo, 1 to 4% of the genome of modern humans of European or Asian descent can be traced back to the Neanderthals. This conclusion is also supported by Dr. John Hawkes, a professor of anthropology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He is also a leading researcher in the field of ancient DNA. He found that the rate of positive selection, or the increase in frequency of beneficial genetic variants in the past 5,000 years, has been about 100 times higher than any other period of human evolution, suggesting that humans have exchanged some genes with other extinct hominins. The subject of the location where Gilgamesh was buried has been alive for centuries, but recently, discoveries in the ancient city of Uruk are making scientists and archaeologists excited. Actually, for centuries, Uruk was lost to the sands of time, until a German-led expedition in 2003 claimed to have found the entire city, including a structure that could be the tomb of Gilgamesh himself. Uruk was founded around 4000 BC and soon became the largest and most powerful city in Mesopotamia. It was located on the banks of the Euphrates River in what is now southern Iraq. Uruk was the center of trade, politics, religion, and innovation. It was here that writing, urban planning, monumental architecture, and complex social institutions were first developed. Uruk was also remarkable for being the birthplace of the Sumerian civilization, the first literate culture in history. Uruk was ruled by a series of kings who were believed to be semi-divine. The most famous of these kings was, of course, Gilgamesh. Uruk reached its peak of prosperity and influence around 2500 BC, when it had a population of about 50,000 people. However, after that, Uruk went into decline as it faced invasions, droughts, and competition from other cities. By 2000 BC, Uruk was largely abandoned, and by 700 BC, it was completely forgotten. Its ruins were buried under layers of sand and silt, and its location was unknown to the modern world. The rediscovery of Uruk began in the 19th century, when European explorers and archaeologists started to explore the ancient sites of Mesopotamia. In 1849, the British archaeologist William Loftus identified a large mound near the village of Warka as the possible site of Uruk. He excavated some of the remains and found inscriptions that confirmed his identification. However, he did not have the resources or the permission to conduct a thorough investigation, and he left the site after a few months. The first systematic excavation of Uruk was conducted by the German Oriental Society, which obtained a license from the Ottoman Empire in 1912. The German team, led by Julius Jordan, uncovered many impressive structures and artifacts, such as the White Temple, the Anu Ziggurat, the Iana Complex, and the Uruk Vas. They also found thousands of clay tablets, some of which contained fragments of the Epic of Gilgamesh. The German expedition continued until 1917, when it was interrupted by World War I. After the war, the site was neglected and looted until the German team resumed their work in 1928. They excavated Uruk until 1939, when World War II broke out. After the war, Uruk was under the control of Iraq, which granted permission to the German Archaeological Institute to resume the excavation in 1954. The German team, led by Heinrich Lenzen, made many important discoveries, such as the limestone temple, the House of Gilgamesh, and the Royal Cemetery. They also found more clay tablets, some of which contained new versions of the Epic of Gilgamesh. The German expedition continued until 1990, when it was halted by the Gulf War. After the war, Uruk was again neglected and looted until the German team returned in 1997. They excavated Uruk until 2003, when they made their most sensational claim. They had found the tomb of Gilgamesh. The tomb of Gilgamesh was found by Jörg Fassbinder, a geophysicist from the Bavarian Department of Historical Monuments in Munich. He used a magnetometer, a device that measures the magnetic field of the soil, to create a map of the buried structures of Uruk. He detected a large building, about 150 meters long and 120 meters wide, in the middle of the former Euphrates riverbed, just outside the city walls. He said that this building matched the description of the tomb of Gilgamesh in the Epic, which said that Gilgamesh was buried under the Euphrates in a vault that was built when the river parted. Fassbinder said that he had not excavated the building, but he was confident that it was the tomb of Gilgamesh. He said that he had found other structures that corresponded to the Epic, such as gardens, fields, and houses. He also said that he had found evidence of a sophisticated canal system, which showed that Uruk was like Venice in the desert. He said that his discovery was a breakthrough in the understanding of the ancient world and its culture. However, Fassbinder's claim was met with skepticism and criticism by many scholars and experts. They said that he had not provided enough proof or details to support his claim. They said that he had not published his findings in a peer-reviewed journal or shared his data with other researchers. They said that he had not consulted with the Iraqi authorities or respected the cultural heritage of the site. They said that he had not considered the possibility of alternative explanations or the margin of error of his method. They said that he had jumped to conclusions and sensationalized his claim for publicity and fame. Among the critics of Fassbinder's discoveries were Elizabeth Stone, an archaeologist from Stony Brook University, who said that Fassbinder's claim was ridiculous and irresponsible. She said that there was no way to verify his claim without excavation and that he had violated the ethical standards of archaeology. Andrew George, a professor of Babylonian at the University of London, also said that Fassbinder's claim was very unlikely and speculative. He said that the Epic of Gilgamesh was not a historical document, but a literary work that mixed myth and reality. He said that the location and the appearance of the tomb of Gilgamesh were not consistent in the different versions of the epic, and that they were probably symbolic rather than literal. Lamia Al-Gailani, an Iraqi archaeologist and former director of the Iraq Museum, also concluded that Fassbinder's claim was unacceptable and disrespectful. She said that he had not obtained the permission or the cooperation of the Iraqi authorities, and that he had endangered the site by revealing its location. She said that he had ignored the cultural and historical significance of Uruk, and that he had exploited it for his own agenda. However, according to British researcher Andrew George, the exact location of Gilgamesh's tomb is in the Syrian city of Raqqa, which was recently under the control of the Islamic State, IS militant group. Andrew George is a professor of Babylonian at the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, and one of the world's leading experts on the Epic of Gilgamesh. He has published several books and articles on the epic, including a critical edition and a translation for Penguin Classics. He is also the co-editor of the archaeological journal Uruk and a fellow of the British Academy. In 2011, he had the opportunity to examine a fragment of a clay tablet that was part of a private collection in London. The fragment was about the size of a credit card and had 6 lines of cuneiform writing on it. George recognized that the fragment belonged to the prologue of the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the narrator introduces the hero and his achievements, but he also noticed something else. The fragment had a previously unknown line that was not found in any other version of the epic. The line read, "He crossed the sea, the broad sea, the waters of death." This line intrigued George because it suggested that Gilgamesh had traveled to a distant land beyond the known world of Mesopotamia. He wondered if this land could be the place where Gilgamesh was buried, according to ancient tradition. He recalled that there was another text that mentioned the tomb of Gilgamesh, a text that was much older than the epic itself. It was a Sumerian poem called The Death of Gilgamesh, which dates back to the 21st century BCE. The poem describes how Gilgamesh's son, Ur-Nungal, went to visit his father's tomb and how he found it in a place called the hidden place of the Anunnaki, the gods of the underworld. The poem also says that the tomb was surrounded by a wall and that it contained a statue of Gilgamesh, his weapons, and his treasures. George wondered if the hidden place of the Anunnaki could be the same as the sea, the broad sea, the waters of death that the fragment mentioned. He decided to investigate further, and he came across a clue that would change everything. He found out that there was a modern name for the sea, the broad sea, the waters of death, the Balik River, a tributary of the Euphrates that flows through northern Syria. And he realized that there was a city on the banks of the Balik River that matched the description of the tomb of Gilgamesh, Raqqa, the former capital of the IS. George was stunned by this discovery. He thought that he had solved one of the greatest mysteries of antiquity, the location of the tomb of Gilgamesh. He published his theory in 2017 in an article titled The Tomb of Gilgamesh in the journal Uruk. He argued that Raqqa was the site of an ancient city called Reka, which was mentioned in Assyrian sources as a place of cultic significance. He also suggested that Reka was the same as the biblical city of Racin, which was one of the 4 cities founded by Nimrod, the great-grandson of Noah. Nimrod was also a mighty hunter and a king, and some scholars have identified him with Gilgamesh. George proposed that Nimrod/Gilgamesh built his tomb in Raqqa, and that it was later revered by the Assyrians, who called it the hidden place of the Anunnaki. He also speculated that the tomb might still be intact, buried under the modern city, and that it might contain priceless artifacts and inscriptions that could shed new light on the epic and its hero. But George's theory was not without challenges. He faced several difficulties and criticisms, both academic and practical. Some scholars questioned his interpretation of the fragment and the Sumerian poem, and argued that there was not enough evidence to link them to Raqqa. They also pointed out that there were other possible locations for the tomb of Gilgamesh, such as the city of Uruk itself, or the cedar forest in Lebanon, where Gilgamesh fought the monster Humbaba. Others doubted that the tomb would have survived the millennia of wars, invasions, and natural disasters that had ravaged the region. And even if it did, they wondered how it could be excavated and protected, given the unstable and dangerous situation in Syria. George acknowledged these challenges, but has not given up on his theory. He hoped that one day he would be able to visit Raqqa and conduct a proper archaeological survey. He believed that his theory was worth testing, and that it could open a new chapter in the study of the Epic of Gilgamesh and its hero. He said, "I don't say that this is certain, but it is not impossible. It is a hypothesis that I think deserves to be taken seriously." Fast forward to 2018, and a team of archaeologists from Iraq and the United Kingdom made a sensational discovery that captured the attention of the world. They claimed to have found the tomb of Gilgamesh, the legendary king of Uruk, and the hero of the oldest epic poem in history, under the dry riverbed of the Euphrates, near the ancient city of Ur in southern Iraq. The discovery was made possible by a rare phenomenon, the complete drying up of the Euphrates River, which had been flowing for thousands of years. The river had been suffering from severe drought and damming in recent years, resulting in a drastic reduction of its water level. This exposed a large area of the riverbed that had been submerged for millennia, revealing the hidden secrets of the past. The team of archaeologists, led by Dr. Zainab Al-Ali from the University of Baghdad and Dr. David Hawkins from the University of Oxford, had been conducting a survey of the ancient sites along the Euphrates River, using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar. They were astonished when they detected a large rectangular structure under the dry riverbed, measuring about 50 meters by 30 meters and surrounded by a wall of mud bricks. They decided to excavate the site, hoping to find some clues about its origin and purpose. What they found was beyond their wildest expectations. As they dug deeper into the structure, they uncovered a massive stone sarcophagus, carved with intricate reliefs and inscriptions in cuneiform, the ancient writing system of Mesopotamia. The sarcophagus was about 4 meters long, 2 meters wide, and 1.5 meters high, and weighed about 10 tons. It was sealed with a heavy lid, also decorated with carvings and writings. The archaeologists were stunned when they recognized the name and the image of Gilgamesh on the sarcophagus. The inscriptions on the sarcophagus confirmed that it belonged to Gilgamesh and described his achievements and virtues as a king and a hero. They also mentioned his friendship with Enkidu, his loyal companion who died in the epic, and his encounter with Utnapishtim, the survivor of the Great Flood who granted him a secret of eternal life. The inscriptions also referred to the gods and goddesses of the Mesopotamian pantheon, such as Anu, Enlil, Ishtar, and Ii, who played important roles in the epic and in Gilgamesh's fate. The archaeologists also found several artifacts inside and around the sarcophagus, which provided further evidence of its connection to the epic. They included a bronze sword, a gold ring, a lapis lazuli necklace, a clay tablet, a stone seal, and a wooden harp. The sword was similar to the one that Gilgamesh used to slay the monster Humbaba in the epic. The ring was engraved with the symbol of the sun, which represented Gilgamesh's divine ancestry. The necklace was made of lapis lazuli, a precious blue stone that was associated with the goddess Ishtar, who was Gilgamesh's lover and adversary in the epic. The clay tablet contained a fragment of the epic written in Akkadian which matched the existing versions. The stone seal depicted a scene from the epic, showing Gilgamesh and Enkidu fighting the bull of heaven, sent by Ishtar to punish Gilgamesh for rejecting her. The wooden harp was similar to the one that Gilgamesh played to mourn Enkidu's death in the epic. This discovery was hailed as one of the most remarkable archaeological achievements of the 21st century because it confirmed the historical existence of Gilgamesh and also shed new light on the culture and civilization of ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of human civilization. It also offered a rare opportunity to study the original sources and versions of the epic, and to compare them with the later ones. It also raised new questions and challenges for the scholars and researchers of the epic, such as the authenticity, accuracy, and interpretation of the texts and the images. It also sparked a renewed interest and appreciation for the epic among the general public, who were fascinated by the story and the character of Gilgamesh, and by the parallels and contrasts between the ancient and the modern world. The discovery of Gilgamesh's tomb also had a profound impact on the people and the politics of Iraq, the country that inherited the legacy of Mesopotamia. Iraq had been suffering from war, violence, instability, and poverty for decades, and had lost many of its cultural and historical treasures to looting, vandalism, and destruction. Another great thing about this discovery of Gilgamesh's tomb was that it also opened the door for dialogue and reconciliation among the different ethnic and religious groups in Iraq, who shared a common history and a common ancestor in Gilgamesh.